Thank you very much, Neil, and good evening, everybody. And first of all, thank you to Tim Bearhelm in particular for inviting me to speak this evening. It's a privilege to be able to do so. So I'm sitting here in Brussels this evening. It's where I live. I used to work for the European Commission. I now work independently, so I need to say that what I'm saying this evening doesn't necessarily reflect the views of my ex-employer, the Commission, and in fact doesn't necessarily, might do, but it doesn't necessarily reflect my own views either. However, I'm going to pitch in, and Tim did ask me to look at one suggestion and then 5 reasons why this suggestion should be supported. So my premise, my suggestion is, and in the context that we're talking about this evening, the UK should rejoin the European Union. You won't be surprised about that. To back up this premise, I have 5 reasons in front of me here. So first of all, and you won't be surprised to hear about this, probably most people in the audience this evening, 4 reasons of trade and economy. We are at the stage now where GDP growth is 5.5% lower than, according to eminent economists, than it would have been if the UK had remained in the European Union. Investment is 11% lower. Trade in goods is 7% lower. We have tax rises because more taxes means more taxes are in place because we've got a slower growing economy. We have 1% less or 1% fewer people in the workforce, and especially in the transport, hospitality and retail sectors. And finally, we have increased inflation as well. In relation to the trade and economy situation, we have the influence or otherwise of the European single market. We've referred already this evening to the situation in Northern Ireland, the situation whereby we now have the fledgling agreement in place. And, let's see what the DUP and the backbench Conservative MPs say about that. But clearly, there is an advantage, and we heard this evening about Scotland, Wales, and England. There's an advantage for Northern Ireland in being able to remain in the single market because of the border with the South. So why would indeed not the whole of the UK get those sort of benefits? And hence begs the question about membership again. The movement of people, it's been such a thorny issue. Migration, it's not ruined, but affected negatively our relations with France, for instance, with boat people coming over from France and trying to enter the UK. And then we have the exodus from London. All right, so in the grand scale of things, percentage-wise, perhaps not that great percentage of workers moving away from London, but they have, and it's under the influence of Brexit. So the UK should rejoin the EU for also, secondly, reasons of defence. All right, so, since Ukraine began, the UK has been able to stand up for itself, by itself. I acknowledge that. But is it really helpful to be, by yourself and separate from your main trading and diplomatic partners? How about joint procurement? There's advantages in procuring defence equipment jointly with other countries, but of course the UK will not be a part of that. And isn't it crucial to get this sort of thing right, where you have different views and these views evolve into disputes, and then you come into fights, and eventually you come into conflicts. And that's where we are with Ukraine at the moment, of course. And international diplomacy and working together for common solutions is key in this context. And related to that is the NATO and EU balance. Clearly, European defence is important. European defence, to a certain extent, you could say unilaterally, but maybe and perhaps and indeed within the context of NATO. But where does the UK stand there? Truly a member of NATO, yes, but certainly and probably not really part of the European apparatus on defence cooperation. So a further reason, international diplomacy. What has happened to the UK's clout and it's the fact that it's taken seriously or not, as the case may be. In government at the moment, we have Brexit supporters, and chosen because they are Brexit supporters and not necessarily primarily because they're competent. We've had 5 prime ministers since Brexit. You know, how does that look internationally? And I would advocate, as part of this view that's being put forward this evening, is that this reduction in overall overseas aid is indirectly linked to Brexit as well. I experienced that firsthand because I have a project in Malawi, and my partner charity no longer receives UK government assistance to reduce poverty in Malawi because of this reduction in overseas aid. So another reason, why would the UK not rejoin another form of the EU, say? Another form of the EU which might be more conducive in the future to the UK rejoining. You've probably heard about the construction of concentric circles, you know, those who are in the Euro, countries in the Euro, countries in Schengen, countries in the European Economic Area, candidate countries, you know, where would the UK sit in that? But as things evolve, you know, who knows, in a few years' time, there could be opportunities. But the UK will need to work hard because they will need to work hard at being accepted back, of course. And there's certainly an opportunity, could be in due course, for a new generation of politicians to take stock and to analyse in a realistic way whether actually, you know, exiting the European Union has been of benefit to the UK or not, and maybe consider going back in again. And then there's the situation of Scotland, but as we've heard already, Wales, England, Northern Ireland, but particularly Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon has gone. So could be that Scotland stays in the United Kingdom and goes back with the United Kingdom into the European Union, which is what they were wanting to do anyway. And finally, putting sovereignty, control, freedom, anti-establishmentarianism behind us. What does sovereignty mean, actually? What does taking back control mean in an interdependent world? You know, why in these circumstances would sovereignty play such a role? Why? What does it mean to actually control your legislative environment? You know, aren't we thinking broader than that? Shouldn't we think broader than that? And then freedom to do what? Make mistakes? I don't know. Does populism really work? Is populism not divisive at the end of the day, and you need sensible heads to come together to find a consensus? And finally, you know, my final point around this 5th reason, i.e. putting sovereignty, control, freedom, anti-establishmentarianism behind us, is that maybe we could do with a new generation of politicians who have integrity and who dare to be honest. In other words, talk about trade-offs, not just espouse a line, you know, which has to hold at all costs, but let the British people know what sort of difficult decisions politicians have to take on occasions. And it would be a difficult decision to go back into the European Union, but maybe it would be worth doing. So that is a view. Thank you very much. And that's a view, that's my premise with my 5 suggestions as to how to attain that premise. Thank you very much, Neil.